Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tale, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, and shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now let's get into today's tale. At the family reunion, my uncle said, "Did you finally lose weight or just your dignity?" Everyone chuckled. Then my 10-year-old stood up and said, "She lost you years ago." Silence fell. "Did you finally lose weight or just your dignity?" That's what my uncle said to me in front of the entire family at our reunion. Last summer, people laughed. Not full-on laughter, more like those awkward chuckles people make when they're too scared to intervene. And then before I could even process the blow, my 10-year-old daughter, Sophie, stood up from her plate of food, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "She lost you years ago." Everything stopped. The backyard went quiet. Nobody looked at anyone. It was like someone had dropped ABMB and we were all waiting for the smoke to clear. But this isn't just about a rude uncle or a precocious kid. This moment was the culmination of years of silent pain, complicated family dynamics, divorce, emotional obesity, and the quiet strength of a little girl who'd seen far too much and understood more than most. Adults, I'm Mallory, 43, and I live in Asheville, North Carolina with my daughter, Sophie. I work in healthcare admin, spend my free time gardening when I can, and until recently spent a lot of time trying to keep the peace with people who didn't deserve my silence. My relationship with my family has always been complicated. My mother is the type who believes family is everything, no matter how badly certain people treat you. My sister Naomi is a bit more distant, emotionally and geographically, and tends to avoid confrontation at all costs. My father passed away when I was 27, and after that, the balance of the family shifted. My uncle Roy stepped in as the loudest male voice left in the room. Not the wisest, just the loudest. Roy's always been a bly dressed up as a funny guy. He says awful things, and when people react, he throws his hands up and calls them sensitive. I grew up with his jabs about my weight, my introversion, my coercive friends, the clothes I wore. I learned early that if you didn't laugh along, you were being difficult. I married Darren when I was 30. He was kind responsible, and for a while made me feel like I was finally getting it right. But marriage has a way of revealing truth. Slowly, ours unraveled over the course of about 7 years. Little betrayals, emotional, neglect, him pulling away, and me trying harder and harder to make up for it. When he finally left after a tearful confession that he'd fallen in love with someone from his gym. It wasn't a shock. It was a relief. I took Sophie and moved into a small rental on the edge of town. I lost weight, not on purpose, but because stress has a way of eating away at you. I didn't cut off my family, but I stopped going out of my way. Calls became fewer, invitations politely declined. Still, when Tara, my cousin, and the only family member who ever really tried to understand me, invited me to the annual reunion in Blowing Rock, I said yes for her and for Sophie, who I didn't want to grow up thinking we didn't have people. I tried to brace myself. I told myself I wouldn't engage, that I'd show up, smile, eat some ribs, and leave, but nothing ever goes as planned with Roy in the picture. The reunion started off okay. The weather was beautiful. Tarara's home looked like something out of a Pinterest board. Sophie was excited to see Tarara's kids and was running around barefoot. Within minutes, people gave me those lukewarm hugs. "Oh, you look so good. How have you been?" With just enough passive aggression to remind me I hadn't shown up for Thanksgiving. Roy made his entrance about hours in, beer already in hand, shirt too tied around the middle, voice already carrying. Over the music, I did my best to stay out of his orbit. I stuck near the food tables, chatted with some cousins, kept Sophie in my line of sight, but Roy always finds his moment. We were near the grill. I was making a plate for Sophie. She'd asked for exactly 2 ribs, no sauce, extra mac and cheese. I was focused on getting it right. Then I felt a presence behind me, too close. I knew who it was. Before I turned, Roy's voice boomed out. "Well, look at you. Did you finally lose weight or just your dignity?" And like clockwork, a few people chuckled. Tara flinched. Naomi looked down at her cup. My mom said nothing. I stood there, ribs and tongs, feeling like I was 12 again, humiliated, small, powerless. Then Sophie spoke. "She lost you years ago." It was so quiet and matter-of-fact. No anger, no sass. Just truth. Roy's face changed. Not immediately, he tried to laugh, but it didn't land. No one joined. Naomi stared at her feet. My mom opened her mouth, closed it again. Tara looked at me, eyes wide and full of something like awe. Sophie walked away. Plate still empty. Just walked right into the house and disappeared. I should have followed her right away, but I didn't. I just stood there. Something inside me cracked open. Not in a bad way. More like something old. Finally breaking apart. So, something new could breathe. Roy muttered something and walked off toward the cooler. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel embarrassed, I felt defended. I found Sophie curled up in one of the guest bedrooms holding her stuffed elephant. She looked up when I came in and said, "Did I make things worse?" Shook my head. "No, baby, you did something really brave." We stayed in that room for a while, just the two of us. Later, Tara came in and gave me a long hug. She said nothing, and she didn't need to. Here Ye's said everything. Support, gratitude, a bit of guilt, maybe. When we came back outside, the mood had shifted. Roy was quieter. People avoided eye contact with him. Someone turned the music down. It wasn't much, but it was something. That night after the drive home and after putting Sophie to bed, he sat on my porch and cried for the first time in a long time. Not from sadness. From relief, Sophie had said the own thing I had never been able to. The next few days after the reunion were strange. I thought I might get a call from my mother, or at least a passive-aggressive text. But nothing came. Naomi called the next evening, which was unusual in itself. We have a decent relationship, but she doesn't do emotional conversations. That night, she surprised me. She said, "I don't know what to say about what happened." I told her she didn't need to say anything, but she did. Slowly. "I'm sorry. I didn't say something. I should have. He's always been like that, and I always just let him." It caught me off guard. I think it caught her off guard, too. Naomi isn't the apologizing type. She'd always tried to coast through family events without making waves for her to admit that was a big deal. We ended up talking for an hour about Roy, about Dad, about growing up in a family, where saying that's just how he is became a shield for cruelty. A few days later, I got an email from Tara. Not a text, an email, like she needed to sit with her thoughts and get them right. She told me that after I left the reunion, a few of the cousins had started opening up. My cousin Miles, who had always been on the quieter side, told her how Roy used to mock him for not playing sports. Other cousin Lori, who'd struggled with infertility, shared that Roy once joked at a Christmas dinner that maybe she should try a different husband if this one wasn't getting the job done. I hadn't known that. I'd always thought I was the main target, because of my weight, my awkwardness, and later my divorce. But I wasn't. I was just one of many. We'd all let it slide, told ourselves to be good sports, and in doing so, we'd given him permission. That realization hit hard. 4 years, I believed I was too sensitive, that I couldn't take a joke. That being upset over cruel comments made me the problem. Turns out I wasn't alone. We were all just carrying our own versions of the same wound. About a week after their union, Roy reached out. It was a Facebook message, just 5 lines. "Didn't mean to upset you. I was just joking." Like always. "Sorry if Sophie got the wrong idea. Hope we're good." It was such a Roy apology, half-hearted, defensive. Wrapped in the implication that I was being dramatic, I didn't respond. I stared at it for a long time, though. Not because I was hurt. Not even because I was angry. I just felt nothing. And that was new. For most of my life, Roy had a hold on me. Even when I left the room, his words stayed. I'd replay them in the car, in the shower, while folding laundry. I'd wonder what I could have said differently. What kind of comeback would have shut him up, but after Sophie's words, after seeing how his face shifted, how the silence spread through the backyard like a fog, I didn't feel the need to fight anymore. I'd been waiting for that moment my entire life, and it came not from me, but from a little girl with strawberry-patched knees and a fierce sense of justice. Sophie didn't talk about it much. A few days after the reunion, while we were driving to the grocery store, Why does he say mean stuff to you? I took a deep breath because some people think being mean is the same as being funny. Why didn't anyone stop him before? I don't know, I said honestly. Sometimes people don't know how to stand up until someone else does it first. She nodded, then after a beat, I don't like him. That's okay, I said. And it was in the weeks that followed something else shifted. People in my family started reaching out. Not a flood, but a steady trickle. Messages, small invitations, little admissions. Tara and I began texting. Almost daily, Naomi invited us over for dinner, just her and her husband, even Miles, who I hadn't seen outside our family events in years, asked if Sophie and I wanted to come hiking with his dog at Pisa National. Forrest Roy wasn't invited to any of it. Not openly excluded, just omitted. When I mentioned it to Tara, she said, nobody wants to deal with him right now. And honestly, it's kind of nice without him. That told me everything I needed to know. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one keeping the peace. I wasn't smoothing things over or making excuses for someone else's behavior, and the world didn't fall apart. If anything, people seemed more at ease. Still, not everyone was supportive. My mom did eventually call 2 weeks after their union. Her tone was sharp, almost accusatory. I heard what Sophie said. She started. Don't you think that was inappropriate for a child? To speak to an adult like that, I took a moment, measured my breath, then said, I think it was more inappropriate for an adult to publicly humiliate me in front of his family. He was joking, she insisted in that tone that always made me feel 12 again. No, he wasn't. And I'm done pretending he was. She sighed. You always did take things too personally. And there it was, that old familiar refrain. But this time I didn't feel like defending myself. I didn't try to convince her, I didn't explain. I just said, okay, Mom. And let the silence do the talking. We haven't spoken, since though she did send Sophie a birthday card. No note, just her name, and $50 folded inside. Sophie opened it, looked at the cash and said, do I have to say thank you? I smiled. You can if you want. You don't have to if you don't. She thought for a moment, then said, I think I'll draw her a picture. That was Sophie drawing a soft line in her own way. Not a full wall, but a boundary. I admired that. 2 months after the reunion, Roy tried to come back in. It was subtle at first, a shared photo on Facebook of one of the cousins from their union with a caption like, great time with family. Well, most of them had tagged nearly everyone except me and Sophie. Then he started commenting on other people's posts saying things like, miss the real crew. Or, things were more fun when we didn't walk on eggshells. Classic Roy passive aggression served with a sight of nostalgia. I didn't respond, and no one else did either. At least not publicly, but I heard from Tara a few days later. Apparently Roy had texted her asking, so my band now? Because some brat decided to talk back. Tara, to her credit, told him he wasn't banned. But she also told him that if he wanted to be part of things, he needed to change the way he spoke to people. He responded with, I'm not changing who I am just because one person can't take a joke. And that was that. No apologies, no ownership, just more of the same. Tara didn't respond. When she told me about it, I didn't feel vindicated, I didn't feel anything. That was becoming a pattern. The less Roy took up space in my life, the less I needed to react to him. But still he lingered around the edges. He showed up at my mother's birthday party that fall, a small gathering at my cousin Mark's house in Winston-Salem. I hadn't been planning to go, but Sophie had been asking to see her grandmother. Despite everything, she missed her. That's the complexity of family love and pain. In the same breath, I warned Tara and Naomi that if Roy was there, I wasn't staying. They agreed that if he came, they'd help me navigate it. We arrived late. Sophie brought her latest drawing, a watercolor of a fox in a field, and gave it to my mother, who hugged her with the kind of affection that made me ache. My mom had never been cruel, just blind in the way that people are when their world is built on denial. Roy was already there. He was in the kitchen drinking beer from a tumbler, talking too loudly about college football. I saw him the moment we walked in. He saw us too. Eyes flicking towards Sophie, then me, then back to the counter like we were just background noise. We made it through cake, through small talk, through group photos. Naomi stuck close to me, clearly uncomfortable. Tara handled the flow of the evening like a diplomat at a summit. Then Roy approached me. He waited until Sophie had wandered off toward the backyard, and Naomi was preoccupied. Helping clear plates, I was standing near the fridge, reaching for a bottle of water. He didn't say, "Hello, just you're really going to act like I'm some monster." I didn't answer. Right away, I just looked at him. He went and, "You're not perfect either, Mallory. I've heard the way you talk about people. Everyone's got something." That was his defense. That I wasn't perfect, I said. I've never publicly humiliated someone I claim to love. He scoffed. "Oh, come on. I made one joke." "No," I interrupted, not raising my voice. "You made a lifetime of jokes that was just the last own I needed to hear." He didn't respond right away. He took a long sip of his drink. Then quietly, "You turned the whole family against me. That almost made me laugh." "No, Roy, you did that." He stared at me like he didn't know what to do with a version of me. That wasn't flinching. Eventually, he muttered something under his breath and walked away. I didn't follow him. I didn't need to. Naomi returned and asked if I was okay. I told her I was, and I was shaken maybe, but not broken. On the drive home, Sophie was quiet. I asked if she'd had a good time. She said, "Nana's house is always loud." I nodded. "It is." Then after a pause, "I heard you talking to him." I glanced at her in the rear view. "I'm sorry you did. It's okay," she said. "He didn't sound happy." "He's not," I said honestly. "But that's not our fault." She thought for a moment. "Will I have to see him again?" "Probably," I said. "But only if you want to, and only when we decide it's okay." She nodded slowly. "Okay," that was the end of it. No more questions. No need for a long explanation. Sophie understood things in a way that most adults couldn't. She didn't need drama or a grand moral. She just needed to feel safe, and that was now my North Star. Over the next few months, things settled into a new rhythm. The usual family holiday texts were quieter. No pressure, no big gatherings, just a few people connecting here. And there, Tara organized a small Thanksgiving dinner, just 6 of us. Naomi brought her famous pumpkin bread. Sophie helped with table settings, and we ate on mismatched plates in Tarara's kitchen, while a soft Norah Jones playlist hummed in the background. It was peaceful in a way that made me realize just how not peaceful previous years had been. Roy wasn't mentioned once. At one point after dinner, Miles looked around and said, "This is the first time in years I've left one of these things without a headache." Everyone laughed. Not forced laughter, real laughter. The kind that bubbles up when the room finally feels safe. I realized then that the shift hadn't just been about standing up to Roy. It was about claiming something none of us had dared ask for before. A version of our family where kindness was the standard. By the time Christmas rolled around, it was clear that our family dynamic had permanently changed. Tara organized a small dinner again. Naomi and Miles came. Sophie and I made a pear tart from scratch. Everyone contributed something homemade. No pretense, no dress code, no speeches. We laughed more, lingered over dessert, and played a game of charades that went well past 10 p.m. Roy wasn't invited. He hadn't spoken to anyone in weeks, not since his outburst at my mom's birthday. According to Naomi, he tried, reaching out to a few people, but everyone was done entertaining his "I'm just being me" routine. No one needed a villain to keep a family together anymore. We had proof now we were better without him, and that in a quiet way was the revenge. But things didn't truly come full circle until the following spring, when something happened that I hadn't expected. My mother called and asked if she could visit. She rarely came to Asheville. She'd only seen my place once, right after I'd moved in. This time she said she wanted to talk in person. I hesitated. Sophie was at a sleepover that weekend, so it would be just the two of us. Part of me didn't want to do it. But the other part, the part that had finally started choosing discomfort over silence, said yes. She arrived on a Saturday afternoon wearing her usual pale pink lipstick and carrying a tin of shortbread cookies like she always did. When she didn't know how to start a conversation, we sat on the porch for a while. We talked about small things, Sophie's school, Naomi's new job, how early spring had come this year. Then she got quiet. "I didn't raise you to be afraid," she said. It caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've been thinking," she said, "about how I let Rory treat you, about how I didn't protect you." Not really. I stayed quiet. I wanted her to say it without prompting. I told myself that keeping the family together was more Important than stopping one person from causing harm, I thought if I kept the peace, things would settle on their own. I swallowed hard. She'd never said anything like this before. But that's not peace, she continued. It's quiet, and quiet isn't always safe. There was a long pause. I'm sorry, Mallory, I really truly am. And for the first time in my life, I believed her. It didn't erase the past. It didn't fix what happened, but it gave me something I'd never had before. A mother who finally saw me not as a difficult daughter or a fragile one, but as someone who had been fighting her own battles with no armor. We sat in silence after that, a different kind of silence, the kind that feels clean. In the weeks after her visit, I heard from Tara again, she told. Roy had started hinting at wanting to make amends, but only because he realized he was now excluded from birthdays, weddings, and even simple weekend barbecues. Apparently, he'd cornered Miles in a grocery store and said, "So I guess I'm the bad guy now." Huh? Miles just looked at him and said, "You always were. We just stopped pretending you weren't." It was the most satisfying thing I'd heard in a long time. But the moment that felt like true revenge, the slow, quiet soul deep kind, happened in late May. During another family gathering, Naomi had organized a potluck picnic at a park just outside of Asheville. It wasn't a big thing, but word spread and about 20 of us showed up, including some family friends we hadn't seen in a while. Sophie and I arrived a little late, just as everyone was laying out the food on folding tables under the shade of Agent Oak. I saw Naomi wave, then Miles. People smiled, real smiles. Kids were running around with frisbees, dogs barked in the distance. Someone was setting up a Bluetooth speaker. I walked in and felt at ease. Roy was not there, but someone had apparently forwarded him the invite, not maliciously, just out of habit. Has showed up about an hour and he looked. Different. Not physically. Just off, like someone who had spent the last year watching a stage show he used to star in, now realizing he'd been replaced by better actors. When he saw me, he paused. We made eye contact. I didn't smile. He walked up to Tara, said something. She shook her head. Miles came over, exchanged a few words, quiet, tense. Then something unexpected happened. Roy turned and walked toward me. He stopped about 5 feet away. Close enough to talk, far enough that I didn't feel cornered. I just came to say, "I get it," he said. I raised an eyebrow. I don't know what happened, but clearly everyone picked a side and it wasn't mine. That was it, his version of an apology. Not for what he said. Not for the years of comments and belittling. Just a complaint that his reign was over. I looked at him, not with anger, not with fear. Just calm. "You were never the center. Roy," I said, "we just stopped orbiting you." His face twitched like he didn't know what to say. "I hope you figure things out," I added. "But not at my expense." And then I walked away. That was it. No shouting. No tears. No final mic drop. Just truth. Undeniable and unshakable. He left about 10 minutes. Later, quietly, without fanfare, without anyone trying to stop him. That's what satisfying revenge really looks like. Not revenge that hurts. Not revenge that humiliates, but revenge that reclaims a life rebuilt without the person who once made it smaller. A child who knows what respect looks like and refuses to accept less. A family reshaped not by force but by choice. And a woman who finally stopped flinching. If you've ever been made to feel small for the sake of someone else's humor, I want you to know you don't need to fight them. You just need to stop laughing along. Eventually, the silence they're left with will be louder than anything they ever said. And that's the best revenge of all.